And circling back to our top story, the fate of Bangladesh's political scene. At this point, still uncertain after the president announced a parliament dissolution amid pressure from protesting student leaders. From one side, we're joined by Lutfey Siddiqi. He is adjunct professor at NUS Business School, joining us from Singapore. Professor Siddiqi, we've heard the student protesters gave a deadline for today for the dissolution of parliament. Army leaders, at least at this point, giving in on that demand. Do you see broad demands being met in the days ahead from the student faction to army leaders?
Yes, I don't think there is much of a standoff there. This movement and the successful culmination of the movement that we saw yesterday in the form of a change in government, a hugely positive occasion for the country from the viewpoint of lives, livelihoods, liberties. The students have been at the forefront of it, and the broad direction of travel, the broad contours of that, it would be unthinkable for what comes next to not include the students in that. Now, in many ways, it's uncharted territory. There is no algorithm on how to put together a caretaker interim government at this stage. I imagine there's some horse trading going on the exact composition of that. But as you saw, the parliament has been dissolved, and I think the direction of travel is pretty clear, and I don't see there being any major standoff on that front.
All right. Army leaders at this point have real impetus as far as what's happening on the economic front. And you wrote this before Sheikh Hasina resigned and left the country. Any transient stability from the current regime would be the stability of a graveyard. What did you mean by that?
That's right. So for me, even though the proximate cause of the recent unrest was the specific issue of quotas in public sector jobs, for me it was really the precipitation of economic imbalances, economic miseries that had resulted in some pretty poor mismanagement, poor management, at least in the 2 years to the run-up to this January's elections, and a crisis of confidence over there. The country has strong fundamentals, but the lack of confidence meant that you just couldn't monetize or act on those fundamentals in recent years. So the change in regime is a necessary condition to that turning around. To just contextualize Bangladesh for your viewers, I mean, it's the fifth largest country in the world, fifth largest in Asia, eighth largest in the world. It's 170 million people, the combined population of Canada and Russia, in a country that's a third of the size of Thailand. The average age, the median age of the typical Bangladeshi is 27 years old, so some 16 years younger than the average Singaporean. So you have young people, heavy density. These are strong fundamentals, good infrastructure, good physical and digital infrastructure. But you just couldn't make that work in a very hyper-managed and hyper-frozen set of economic variables. The exchange rate, interest rates, they were the stock market levels. They were frozen administratively at unsustainable levels in the run-up to the last elections. And when they did want to relax them, there was just no confidence in the system. So there was no rebound in no significant or proportionate rebound in exports when the currency depreciated by 30%. And so confidence needed to be injected, and investments needed to be fostered. And the change in regime, to me, was economically inevitable for a country that has no oil, no natural resources. And autocracies don't survive without natural resources if they're at war with their own people, and particularly their biggest natural resource,
so
arguably, which is their young people.
Pardon me for cutting me in, Professor Siddiqi. If the students get their demand being met, and Muhammad Yunus, that's Nobel Peace Prize laureate, he won the prize in 2006 for pioneering microfinancing, he's a globally recognizable figure. If it's immediate confidence we need globally, would this be, I suppose, one way to kickstart that confidence before any more sustained changes can be made in the Bangladeshi economy?
There is no better person in the world than Professor Yunus for this. He's the man of the moment. You just have to think about the fact that he's a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. He's also won the US presidential, congressional medals. Very few people have had a combination of these. But a peace laureate who talks about business, innovation, creativity, startups, execution, that's been his entire profession. He's analytically an economist, but he's a business builder. So, and he's got this soft power in his own personal brand that he can lend internationally to the country, because the country needs to convene international capital. It needs to demonstrate trust in the competency and trust in the good faith of people running the place. So I think if it's about injecting investment, fostering investment in the way that Singapore does very well, you need that level of confidence. Of course, he'll need to create a team around him. He needs to make the team gel in a very agile manner. And we saw some wonderful things during the student movement, where the way they coordinated themselves and in a non-hierarchical manner, I think they can come together. And then it's all about execution. The economy is not going to wait for the country to resolve ideological battles or even complete the whole process of depoliticizing institutions. We need to get to work. We need to get to work as quickly as possible and get into execution mode.
And I think he'd be great. But get people in work. Thanks for that, Professor Lutfey Siddiqi from the NUS Business School in Singapore.